You watered it through July heat, fed it in spring, mulched it like the label said, and still 5 years later, that young apple tree stands there with yellow leaves, cracked bark, and 3 sad pieces of fruit. It feels like bad soil, or disease, or a brutal winter, but many backyard fruit trees are not killed by neglect. They are killed by help. A decision made in 10 minutes on planting day can take years to show its damage. What if the thing slowly killing your fruit tree is not neglect, disease, or weather, but one small act of care you gave it years ago? The first mistake is so common that many people cannot even see it until they dig around the trunk. I grew up around fruit trees the way some people grow up around lawn chairs and barbecue grills. Grandparents, parents, old orchard rows, trunks, scarred from decades of weather and work. And the first rule I learned was not how to do more. It was how to notice when the tree needed you to stop. In the next 8 mistakes, we are going through the things that quietly weaken backyard fruit trees: planting, watering, feeding, pruning, staking, fruiting, and the damage people do with mowers, mulch, and good intentions. Most are simple, most are fixable, and if your tree is already struggling, you will have a checklist by the end. And the biggest killer begins before the tree has even had a chance to grow. Planting too deep turns a fruit tree into a slow failure. At the base of the trunk, you should see the root flare, where the trunk widens and becomes roots. On grafted trees, you should also see the graft union, that swollen or crooked seam above the roots. Both belong above soil level. When bark is buried, it stays damp. Damp bark rots slowly. Pests move in. Roots can circle the trunk, and the tree may decline 5 years later for no obvious reason. If the graft union is buried, the fruiting variety can root above it and bypass the dwarfing rootstock completely. Scrape the soil back. If the trunk enters the ground like a fence post, it is too deep. But even if the tree was planted correctly, many people recreate the same problem with a bag of bark chips. That neat cone of bark chips looks tidy, but it is a mulch volcano. It piles damp material against the trunk, exactly where bark needs air. Under that cone, the trunk stays wet, rot can hide, and voles or mice get a covered tunnel right to the bark. On young fruit trees, they can chew a ring around the trunk and kill it. Bad mulch is tall, narrow, and touching the tree. Good mulch is a wide, flat donut. Keep it a handspan away from the trunk. Spread it out toward the branch line. Keep it 2 to 3 inches deep. The next mistake looks like care too, but it trains the tree to become weak exactly when it needs strength. A daily sprinkle feels safe because the soil looks dark for an hour. But roots do not chase intentions. They chase water. If the top inch is the only place that gets wet, the tree builds its feeder roots there, close to the surface, close to the heat. Then July arrives, the topsoil turns dusty by noon, and the tree has no deeper reserve to draw from. A better watering is slow and boring, a long soak, once a week, deep enough to pull roots downward. For newly planted fruit trees, do that through the first 2 seasons. But check the soil first. If it is still damp a few inches down, wait. And once gardeners see slow growth, the next instinct is usually to feed the tree, which can make everything worse. So you reach for the same bag that makes the lawn turn thick and emerald. That is the trap. Lawn feed is usually loaded with nitrogen. To grass, that means blades. To a young apple, pear, or peach tree, it means soft shoots, big leaves, and very little reason to make flowers. The tree looks successful for a while, taller, greener, busy, but that lush growth is weak growth. Aphids find it fast because the new tips are tender and full of sap. Then autumn comes and those soft stems may not harden before the first frost. If the leaves are green and growth is steady, skip the feed, use compost mulch instead. Only add a balanced, fruit-focused fertilizer when the tree actually shows a need. But even a well-fed, well-watered tree can be open to disease by one cut made in the wrong month. Apples and pears are usually pruned in winter while the tree is dormant. Bare branches make the shape easy to see, and the cuts sit quietly until spring growth starts. Stone fruit is different. Plums, cherries, peaches, apricots, and almonds should be pruned in summer, not winter. A winter cut on these trees can stay wet and exposed, inviting silverleaf disease and bacterial canker into the wood. In summer, active growth helps the tree seal the wound faster. The rule is simple. Pip fruit in winter, stone fruit in summer, and whatever you prune, take no more than 1/4 of the canopy in 1 year and never leave stubs. Cut cleanly, just outside the branch collar. And sometimes the thing weakening the trunk is not a saw cut at all. It is the support that was meant to protect it. A stake is a crutch, not a spine. For the first year or 2, it can stop a young fruit tree from rocking loose before new roots grip the soil. But the trunk still needs to move. That flex in the wind is the signal that tells it to thicken, strengthen, and stand on its own. Leave the stake too long, and you raise a tree that has never learned to bear itself. The day the support comes off, one strong gale can fold it. The tie is worse. As the trunk expands, a forgotten strap can bite through the bark and cut into the living layer underneath, choking the flow of water and nutrients. Even when the tree survives all that and finally sets fruit, one generous decision can rob it of next year's crop. When a young apple tree finally loads itself with fruit, thinning feels like vandalism. You waited years for this. Now you are supposed to twist half of it off and drop it on the ground. But the tree cannot size and sweeten every fruit it sets. Leave them crowded, and you get clusters of small, bland apples, bent limbs, and a tree that spends its reserves in one exhausting season. That is how biennial bearing starts. Too much fruit this year, almost nothing next year. Thin early. Keep apples about 4 to 6 inches apart. Plums can sit closer, around 2 inches. Remove the smallest, damaged and misshapen fruit first. But the most avoidable killer of established trees is not subtle gardening at all. It is a few seconds of tidying. The string trimmer seems harmless. You're just cleaning the grass around the trunk, making the orchard look tidy. But every time that nylon line taps the bark, it can cut the cambium, the thin living layer that moves water, sugars, and growth around the tree. 1 nick is a wound, 10 nicks become a pattern. Over seasons, those cuts can join up around the trunk. That is ring barking. The same result as taking a knife and cutting a complete circle through the bark. The fix is simple. Keep a clear mulch ring around every fruit tree. No grass at the base, no mower deck, no strimmer line. Now the question becomes, if your tree is already struggling, how do you work out which mistake is the one hurting it? Start with the easiest evidence. Kneel at the base and pull the soil back with your fingers. You are looking for 2 things: the root flare, where the trunk widens into the first roots, and the graft union, the swollen bend where the fruit variety was joined to the rootstock. If the trunk goes straight into the ground like a fence post, it may be planted too deep. Roots sit short of oxygen, bark stays damp. The tree survives, but it never really thrives. Then clear anything touching the bark. Mulch, grass, labels, tight ties, plastic guards. If it traps moisture or squeezes the trunk, it is not protection anymore. After that, read last year's growth, check pollination, age, rootstock, and frost pockets. Once you see the pattern, the real villain in this story is not ignorance, it is overcare. That is the strange part. Most of these mistakes begin as kindness: a little extra water, a little more fertilizer, a stake left on for support, mulch pulled close to keep weeds down, every tiny fruit saved because it feels wasteful to remove one. But old orchard trees did not survive for decades because someone fussed over them every weekend. They survived because their roots could breathe, their trunks could move, and their branches were allowed to become strong. So before you buy another tree, there is one thing to do with the tree you already have. Take a trowel outside today and look at the base of your tree. Not the mulch, not the weeds, the trunk itself. Scrape gently until you can see the root flare, where the trunk widens and the first roots begin. If bark is buried under soil or mulch, that may be the hidden killer. So plant high, keep mulch off the trunk, water deeply, go easy on nitrogen, prune by species, remove stakes and ties, thin the fruit, protect the bark from trimmers. Fruit trees often need less help, not more. Check the linked guides for pruning, planting, pollination, and monthly care, and comment what you found at the base of your tree. Thanks for watching.